In my talk today regarding Tolkien and politics, I hope to show that Tolkien's idea about the One Ring and the machine can be better understood thanks to Ellul's theory about the technological system, and that Tolkien's political message is in complete opposition to Unabomber's manifesto. Starting from the ruling ring, it is important to remember that one of the deep, most fascinating, and never well understood enough qualities of the One Ring is that it cannot be used for good purposes. This is because everyone who uses its power becomes a servant of its power, and it is for this reason that the ring should be destroyed. To better understand the magical power of the ring, this quote from letter 131 is fundamental. The thoughts expressed here are extremely dense, and in regard of my thesis, it is important to note that here Tolkien affirms the following sequence. Art produces a subcreated world. This action can also produce love for the primary world. After the fall, the love for the primary world may become possessive, so the subcreator wishes to become a creator. This leads to the desire to change the creator's world and its laws, especially concerning mortality. This causes the desire of power and to make the will more quickly effective. And finally, this leads to magic in the secondary world and to the machine in our primary world. To better understand Tolkien's ideas on magic, it is important to underline that here he distinguishes four different powers in regard of their purposes, for domination or not, their means, with or without an external apparatus. Tolkien considers magic the powers in red. The power of a ring is obviously a power for domination with an external apparatus, while the elvish rings, whose aim is to prevention or slowing decay, letter 131, are not for domination. Considering the power that do not need an external apparatus, the voice of Saruman is for domination, while human fantasy and elvish enchantment are not. It is important to underline that this division is not between good powers on the right and evil powers on the left. In fact, fantasy can be put to evil uses, and in his secondary word, it was the elvish desire to know and to embalm that caused the making of the One Ring. Returning to our theme, we can now say that at the core of magic and of the machine lies the desire of domination and of making the will more quickly effective. And it is for these reasons that the machine in the primary world is the closest thing to the most powerful magic, which is the One Ring. Also, Christopher Tolkien underlines this important idea. The problem now is, but what is the machine? In the letters and in its Legendarium 2, Tolkien clearly distinguishes the machine that we cannot use and the machines in general. For example, in Hobbiton there were machines like watermills, and also those industrial mills are not evil objects that can be used for good purposes. So, it is possible to use machines for good purposes, and this distinguishes machines from the ring and from the machine. In fact, I can use a gun to block my door, or use a giant bomber to transport people. These are good purposes for bad means, but these means, the gun, the giant bomber, are not the machine. To mark this difference, I can say that machines are the products of the machine in some fashion. This is a quote from The Lost Road. Okay, we have demonstrated that the machine is like the one ring in our primary word, and the differences between the machine and the machines. But the previous question, what is the machine, is still without an answer. Now, in my humble opinion, the answer is, in our primary word, the closest thing to the machine is the technological system. This idea was elaborated by the French scholar Jacques Ellul in 1954 with the book The Technological Society. This is the title of the English translation, and in other works. In too few words, for Ellul, a system in general is a set of elements connected in such a way that a change of one element causes a change in the others, while the technological system is a system whose elements are production, consumption, and culture, mainly technical, and whose process is an exponential self-growth. As for Tolkien's distinction between the machine and machines, the technological system is different from the technological machines or objects, which are the product of the system. And as for the One Ring, in this system, the human being is only an element who serves the system, process of self-growing as a workers, as a consumers, as a technicians. For this reason, we can use every technological object for good purposes or bad purposes, but we cannot use the technological system, which uses us for its self-growth that cannot be stopped or changed. Let's make an example to clarify these concepts. 30 years ago, if I wanted to read a book on my favorite sofa, I had to take my car, drive to a bookshop, ask the bookseller for the desired book, order the book, return home, wait a week to hear from the bookshop, take the car again, buy the book, return home, and finally, I could start to read the book on my favorite sofa. So, to buy a book took more or less a week and 4 car trips. Then, since 25 years ago, thanks to Amazon, passage 1 to 5 and 7 to 8 have disappeared, because then I can order the book on Amazon without waiting for it on my sofa and starting to read it after more or less a week without car trips. Then, in 2005, Amazon Prime arrived, and so my waiting time reduced from 7 to 2 days, more or less. And now, the Kindle has arrived, so also Passages 1 to 9 have been deleted. My desire to read the book on my sofa has reduced from 10 days and 4 car trips to 1 minute and 1 click or touch on my Kindle. And now I have to confess that I am not immune to this change. In fact, I have become a Kindle addict, buying far more books than before, but please don't tell this to my wife. Now, it is important to note that to gain this result, machines are necessary. For production, Amazon warehouses and robot. For consumption, a personal computer and a Kindle reader. For culture, engineers able to create always faster PC, personal computer, Kindles and warehouses. But the technological system is the set of these elements and the process that changes these elements to make the will more and more effective. So we become more and more addicted. In fact, we can stop, nature wants to stop this magical movement. In summary, for Jacques Ellul, the technological system has these qualities. It's a movement of self-growing, which is always quicker. Man cannot use the system. Man is a servant of the system. For these reasons, the technological system is very close to the One Ring. So, we can say with an application that the best candidate to the rule of Tolkien's machine, which is the closest thing to the One Ring in our primary world, is Ellul's technological system. Please note that also other scholars have shortly underlined the similarities between Tolkien's and Ellul's ideas. Now, I come to the most explosive part of my speech concerning Unabomber. His true name is Ted Kaczynski. He was a mathematics prodigy, but abandoned his academic career and moved to a remote cabin without electricity in Montana, where he lived as a recluse while learning survival skills to become self-sufficient. He witnessed the destruction of a wilderness surrounding his cabin and concluded that living in nature was becoming impossible. So he decided to fight industrialization through an ingenious and diabolical postal bombing campaign which, between 1978 and 1995, led to the death of 3 people and injured 23 others. There were no breakthroughs in the FBI's attempts to unmask him until, in 1995, he sent a letter to the New York Times, promising to desist from terrorism if the New York Times or the Washington Post published his essay entitled Industrial Society and Its Future. This essay, that is also known as Unabomber's Manifesto, was published on the Washington Post, and upon reading it, Kaczynski's brother David recognized the prose style and reported his suspicions to FBI. This led to Ted's arrest in 1996 and his sentencing to 8 consecutive life terms in prison. In his essays, Kaczynski explicitly quoted Ellul. He considered Ellul a soul twin because they both make the same analysis of a technological society. However, Kaczynski takes a step further in deducing some practical consequences. If a technological system cannot be used for good purposes, and its self-growing is against nature and humanity, the technological system should be destroyed. I do not know if Kaczynski has read The Lord of the Rings. He never quoted Tolkien in his works. I asked his brother David if Ted has read Tolkien, but he doesn't recall any conversation with him about The Lord of the Rings. David gave me Ted's address in jail, so I tried to contact him by post to ask him about his possible link to Tolkien, but unfortunately the letter never arrived. However, we can see that his idea on the technological system and his decision to destroy it is very close to the one made in the Council of Elrond about the One Ring, as Hag also notes. Now, to conclude my speech, let's make a summary. Tolkien affirms that in our primary world there is something very close to the One Ring, and in regard of Ellul's and Kaczynski's idea, the best candidate to the role of a ring in our primary world is the technological system. Ellul does not purpose any practical solution to the technological problem, while Kaczynski explicitly affirms that the technological system should be destroyed with violent acts. Now, the very final question is, what kind of political message does Tolkien propose to solve the technological problem? If we consider letter number 52, one could wrongly think that he is not far from Kaczynski's ideas. Obviously, we have to consider this text only a provocation. Read my lips, please. I completely reject any interpretation of Tolkien as being in any way like the violent activist Kaczynski. In fact, Tolkien is in complete opposition to Kaczynski. Never dynamited any factories or tried to organize a movement for dynamited factories or killing people, and nothing in his legendarium or in his letters can be construed as approving similar violent activities. So, to answer the question about Tolkien's political message, it is better to observe that what Tolkien did during his life in connection with magic and the machine. Tolkien spent his life using fantasy and, being a devout Catholic, praying to God. As in regard of Tolkien and politics, it is important to underline that the most political effect of fantasy are escape and recovery. In fact, escape is also a political activity of condemnation of the worst inexorable products of the machine. And recovery is a practical activity that truly changes our minds and allows us to see the world without possession. Now, a deeper analysis of the political value of fantasy, recovery, and escape would take more time and space. I promise to do it next year if you will be so kind to invite me again after this explosive speech. Here, I can only conclude with a final thought. For Tolkien, the machine, like the ring, is against man and against nature, and cannot be used for good purposes, so it should be destroyed. I have also showed that the best candidate to the role of the machine in our primary world is Ellul's and Kaczynski's technological system. But, in opposition to Kaczynski's idea, Tolkien's political message is to fight the technological system not through any forms of violence, but using fantasy, escape, recovery, and also hoping that by chance, as we say in Middle-earth, the technological system will fall into the crack of doom. Will fantasy, escape, recovery, and chance be enough to solve the technological problem? I do not know, but I really hope so. Many thanks for your attention.